Welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Numbers. Today we're delighted to be joined by Naom McElhatton, who is the Irish Ambassador for Women in AI. So Naomh, you've worn lots of hats during your career and been involved in technology and things like that. But how have you segued into AI?
So for context, I started my career out in education as a primary school teacher. Not many people know that, and realised very quickly that teaching was not my vocation. And so I left. I was living in London, loving life there, and got into the whole world of sales and marketing and events, and came home, worked for Ulster Business Magazine, and then I got into radio, and then I fell into a startup. And it's a long time ago, we're talking back in 2007, 2008, and it was a digital advertising platform. So we were online advertising, and like many startups, we didn't get the investment we needed and it failed. So I started my own business then in 2008, and I thought, if everybody else can do it, I can do it. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my first bite into the utilisation of technology in business. Mm-hmm. And everything else really just kind of naturally evolved. I grew a business and sold a business in the Middle East back between 2012 and 2018. And you could just see the natural evolution of various technologies developing. Like, believe it or not, e-commerce was just coming to kind of the fore. Lots of people were starting to build apps. Lots of people were using social media. Like, this is always a new found art. And then I was always curious about how we could use tech to make things easier, to make things better, to make things more efficient. And then I had the opportunity to develop a medtech platform, which is a spin out of UCC a number of years ago, and it was all built on the foundations of AI. And then another startup I got involved in was very much driven all on AI. So how do we use AI to hyper-personalize content for our users? So it was just a natural progression. It wasn't like I went out one day and thought, oh, I'm going to work in AI today. It kind of just naturally fell into the pattern of roles that I found myself in. And I have been a member of Women in AI, which is a global community. Since 2018, 2019, I was the entrepreneurial lead there, and obviously was made the ambassador last year, which is obviously one of the proudest moments ever in my career. So it's kind of just been a natural evolution. There wasn't one thing that happened that said, this is going to be it, because you're right. I do wear so many hats and still wear so many hats. But it's funny, like with the She Said Club, I created it just to support other women and well-being. And now we're using AI to support our well-being, and lots of therapies are driven on the back of AI. The Business of AI Club obviously is about teaching businesses how to use it, because I think there's a lot of hype. I think a lot of businesses are completely overwhelmed with artificial intelligence, and where do they start? And I think for me that's a huge opportunity, because it's just taking a step back and supporting businesses actually understand how it fits into their actual organisation.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It has evolved, probably because, as you mentioned there, sort of e-commerce is even going back to the time of the internet. It's sort of all these new things, and they evolve, and technology's evolved over time. So I suppose things naturally, it's now the newest thing is AI, and that's where we're being developed into. And I suppose it's a wee bit of going back to basics, because I think AI, it's sort of, I have so many conversations with people, and it's sort of, we'll get AI to fix that, or we'll just put that in if things have changed within the business. But what is actually AI? What are people actually talking about?
Yeah, well, I think it's a very personal choice actually in how you use AI within your business. What people don't actually understand is there's so many more elements to AI. AI is like a broad term for a lot of usages of technology. So we have NLP, we have RAG models, we have deep tech, we have Gen AI, which, to be fair, is probably the most used type of AI currently. And I think people get confused when they say, oh, I'm using AI. You're probably using a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Copilot or something, which is a generative AI application. It's much broader and deeper than that. Like, people take it for granted that we're completely consumed by it. So our Spotify is driven by AI, our Netflix recommendations are driven by AI, our Uber Eats, or any app that we use that gives us a personalized recommendation is driven by AI. A lot of companies now think that they need to be using this, kind of this like dark art of AI for their business. But for us, it's actually just about taking a step back and trying to understand, where is this actually going to save me time, improve efficiencies, maybe help reduce costs, obviously help increase the bottom line. So one of the things that we have worked on significantly, especially in the SME space, is working on a one-to-one level with organizations to understand their purpose. So number one, like, why are you using AI? So don't just jump on the wagon for the crack and think, well, I'm using AI because, actually have a purpose. Why is it strategic? Where does it fit into your business model? And try to understand where the integration actually will work. The MIT guys in Boston, they have a team, a NANDA research team, found that 95% of AI integrations were failing in business because they weren't actually impacting or saving time, and a lot of processes were being run in duplicate in parallel at the same time, because they were trying this new technology but still doing the old school methodology. And actually it was getting more complicated because they weren't focused on what the actual strategic initiative was. So I think if businesses just take a wee step back for a minute and reflect and see, well, understand the why, and then they can figure out the rest from there.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think that ChatGPTs, the Claudes, people are using them and using them quite well, and it sort of makes us feel sort of, how will we get trainees to be up to speed when they've got access to all this material and things. But you mentioned a few other things like NLPs, like that's totally beyond my. ChatGPTs where I start and end probably.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all you have to use, because at a very high level. You see, this is exactly the problem. People are fear-mongered into thinking they need to use all these different elements, and they don't actually understand the why. So if you take it down by business unit, right? So HR, there's loads of HR platforms out there that will do all your onboarding from hire to fire and everything in between. And we all know that that's a laborious process. So how do we streamline that? So use your artificial intelligence to do that. Finance, like, it's huge, right? So in fintech and regulation, in finance software, accountancy packages, that's like the real gem, because that's my weak point in all of running a business. One thing I've struggled with the most is getting my head around not the finances. I know what we need to get and what we need to make a business viable, but it's all the intricate processes, the tax efficiencies, all your payrolls, all of that. There's so many amazing platforms out there. You don't need to struggle with it. Yeah. There's loads of support out there. Sales and marketing, oh my gosh, like, you can do your social media marketing calendar in 60 seconds now using, generative AI. You can do email marketing campaigns. And so for me, I use it every day. Like, there's no doubt about it. I'll have something that a proposal I need to do, a press release, a training program, or whatever it is that I want to do. I'll put that in, and it'll bring the kind of idea, it'll give me the foundation of the idea, which will support me then build on things much more effectively. And I think that's where businesses need to identify again where they can use it. If you're looking to develop some proprietary AI, my recommendation would be to go and work with a university in their research departments. Like, I've worked for years with DCU, they're incredible. And there's loads of supports out there as well to help you develop that. If it's something cutting edge, if it's just a wraparound, it's not going to work. But I think understanding, I keep going back to this, is understanding the why. Yeah. And you'll not go far wrong. The other thing that's really important, and I realise you've opened a can of worms here with me at the minute, is the data.
Yeah.
So what data are you using in your business? Because people forget that AI is primarily driven on data input. So it's really important that you understand, what data are we using. I spoke at a conference last year, and I developed it. It's a 5P framework, right? So number one is your purpose. Number two is your process. So what data? Is it financial data? Is it customer data? Understanding this information is vital, because without that, you can't make informed decisions. Then there's other things that you need to consider as well, is mitigating bias within your data. This is something that's huge that people don't understand as well. There are huge ethical and responsibilities that businesses need to take when they're starting to use artificial intelligence within their companies. You have the likes of the EU AI Act, you have the national AI strategy. Depending on where you're trading, you need to understand the regulation and policies that are applicable to your type of business if you're using AI in various countries. So there's a lot to get our heads around. It's very much like the start of GDPR. So around the compliance issues and all of that, the policy that you have in place, and it's very simple to rectify. Make sure that you have a good governance and AI policy for your business, just like your GDPR policy, just like your social media policy. Have that suite of documents because you're going to need it.
Yeah, and then it's obviously wrapped around with all the training and things, because we've heard lots of things in the news where people have, someone in the organisation has popped data, maybe clients' data, and there's the whole security around.
What's the breach of confidentiality, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, and these are the things, this is good governance, and again, it can't be a bottom-up approach, it has to be top-down. So you need the SLT behind this, you need to take accountability for it, and I think it's really important that businesses start to actually think about this. It's not going away, you only have to read the news every day. You can't go around for a coffee without somebody talking about AI. Like I see the usage across the landscape, like you have creatives using AI, you have fintech, you have cybersecurity, you have, marketing, you have every department is now, every industry is now absorbed in how they can use AI, It's very exciting. Like I'm in my element. Like I love it. Like I genuinely love it. And I sit on the board of the Business AI Alliance in the UK, which is all about lobbying for SMEs with government, because the problem you have is there's a monopoly of tech companies that have the kind of authority on how things should be structured. But the reality is the most exciting AI that will evolve over the next decade will be created by a very small team, maybe somebody in their bedroom, a small SME. So how do they get a fair piece of the pie? And I think that's really important as well, is that we look beyond just ChatGPT and Gen AI, because it's a much bigger picture.
Yeah, and so it always goes that core around sort of what is the processes that you need to be more efficient in. It's anything that can be repeatable is an easy win, really.
100%, and it's always iterative, right? So I started and I didn't finish. So there's 5 P's to think of, and this will be like, if you're watching this is your kind of your structure for any usage of AI. So your purpose. So what objective are you having for your company? And you don't have to do everything all at once. So take one pilot of the integration of AI into your business. So say it's for sales and marketing, because that's the easiest, right? So understand, what are you benchmarking that against? So your purpose, your process, so that's your data. So what are you benchmarking that against? Is it, customer data? Is it engagement data? Is it sales data? What are the commercial figures? Understand that. Then people. People are your biggest asset. So, and people obviously have this fear as well that they're going to lose their job and the robots are coming in and all of that. That's nonsense. But the people that will have the advantage are the people that understand how to use AI within their business. And there's so many free courses out there online. So your people, what are the internal resource capabilities? Do you need to go externally? Do you need to get training? Whatever it might be, but understand that. Just don't take it for granted that somebody will understand. This is a whole new world that we're all exploring at the minute. The next then is obviously performance. So if you invest time and resource into running this out, how do you manage performance? And then the other piece is the platforms you're using. So have total accountability across that framework, and you'll never go far wrong.
Yeah, that's really, really useful advice for anyone if they're starting from scratch, really.
Yeah.
And I suppose we do see the quickest wins as anything that's repeatable, that's something that's happening every day or every other day. But suppose what's the easiest thing that people can do? Is it getting training? Is it going and understanding what they need to do first?
Well, I'm a massive advocate that education is power, right? So knowledge is power. So read up on this. All you have to do is put AI for business into Google search and you will get any amount of information. But again, it's refining it down to what's applicable to you. The way I use AI is different to how you will use it. It's different to how that girl across the street will use it, So again, I just keep drumming it back. it's all about how you use it's a hyper personalized experience. So depending on your role, depending on your business, depending on what you're trying to achieve, everybody will have a different goal. But take time to read. There's any amount of resource online. I suppose just on that as well, it's really important to fact check. One of the biggest issues we face are the hallucinations that a ChatGPT or a Gen AI application will give. You know, back in the day, I was like, tell me who Naomh McElhatton is. And they were like, she is the managing director of XXX, which was my competitor. Yeah. I was like, I am not. You know, but the reality is it's picking, it's learning, it's using machine learning to, you know, constantly churn data, constantly update, all of that. So just fact check. And just interestingly enough, I was taken in as an expert voice on a PhD student had used Gen AI to support their citations and footnotes, which was all within the AI guidelines of usage. And unfortunately, they hallucinated on some of the references and the journal URLs were incorrect. And we had to go and appeal this, that this was not the student's fault. And thankfully they won because they really deserved to. But again, these are the things that are completely new and things to consider, that always fact check, always personalize. You know, if you are going to use AI for your marketing, for example, and you write an email or you are doing a social media campaign, just take a second, read it. Does this sound like me? Does this sound like my brand? Is this, you know, still my tone of voice? Because there's an authenticity that can be lost when you use AI. Like, I look for the word truly, the word fostering, you know, there's all these key words that, you know, you're like, oh, you just use that in ChatGPT. You didn't even, you know, read through that. And that big double hyphen,
yes,
the long hyphen,
I'm like, it's
such a telltale sign, right? So don't get lazy with it. I think that's important as well. Absolutely use it as your thought partner, as your kind of, you know, bringing your ideas to foundation level. I do it every day and it's amazing. But I think it's just make sure you don't get lazy with it, because then you're prone to losing business if it's, and people still see it as a cheat. Not everybody has bought into it completely, that this is a new way of business. You know, they think you're slacking if you're using it. Not at all. But be cute, you know, be cute about how you use it and use it to your advantage as opposed to disadvantage.
Yeah, and it does have that bias as well, which is the fact checking. Because I know I got a client had obviously taken some advice we had given them in respect of tax and then come back with some questions on it. But the prompts that they'd put in were very much wanting it to be the answer that the client wanted, even though that wasn't the actual tax legislative answer to it. So there's that side as well.
That's a brilliant point, because actually prompts are everything. So if I say, give me 500 words on sustainability, it could write anything. But if I say, give me 500 words on sustainability based on my CSR responsibility in an accountancy practice, that will give you a completely different overview. So it's really important that you work on your prompts and let them evolve over time. Make sure that if you are, for example, that the legislation is relevant to Northern Ireland or to the Republic of Ireland or to the UK or to wherever you're doing business, because a lot of the time it could still be very much US driven. So depending on where they're pulling the resources from, it's really important. So one thing as part of somebody's exploration and training would be to actually, how do I write prompts effectively so that I'm getting the best response possible? And I find even now, I'm like, no, you're not getting it. I nearly have a row. And they're like, hey, I'm sorry about that. I automatically give my ChatGPT an American accent, you know. So it's really important to really zone in on the specifics to get a good answer.
And I suppose there's obviously an investment piece. People need to go and look at what process they need to do. Even them 5 Ps that you'd outlined, you know, there's a time cost and investment. And I suppose, like, do people need to go and get software developers employed? You know, that's probably one thing people think.
And this is, unfortunately, because a lot of my network are the most incredible engineers and developers, and they're actually the guys that I fear the most for in business, because There's so much you can do now in vibe coding, free open source software. You know, people can build websites at home in 20 minutes, you know, so that this is where there's massive savings for small businesses that to make it more cost effective. But again, it's not that fear of I'm not going to have a job. It's about getting ahead of the game. So if you're an engineer and you have that fabulous mentality of coding and understanding numbers, and I look at a lot of software engineers and developers in absolute awe of their talent. So it's about reskilling and upskilling into the world of AI engineering, because we're always going to need that. So it's nearly like the new era. So it's about getting up to speed and how they can become that AI engineer so they don't become defunct.
Yeah, and suppose, you know, that's suppose business really. It's just always trying to keep one step ahead of your competitors and thinking of something new and what's the best way to do it. And suppose just for any business leaders that are listening to us and watching us today, so what's the first thing you would tell them to do, go and look at this week to get a start?
I think if they were serious about starting to use AI and not just using it as an ad hoc kind of tool, I would probably have an SLT about it and have a bit of a product kind of think tank around it. So what are we trying to do? What do we want to do here? And actually come up with a deployment roadmap. So, okay, we're going to look at sales and marketing. What are we currently, you know, spending on social and all the various elements, and then, you know, make a business case for that. It's like anything else. It's about the application of, you know, accountancy software. It's the application of HR software or hiring new people. You know, you think about these things, and if you see things as an expense, get rid of them. But if you see them as an investment, like put the time and effort into it. There's definitely time allocation for a team to get their head around that, and I think it's really important that they take the time now and do that, because it'll be worth it. So get the SLT around the table. You know, where's the opportunity, where's the low-hanging fruit, pilot it, see how it goes. Did it work, did it not work? And you know, some of the times it mightn't do any better, so don't see that as a failure. That's just a learning. And then start to think about the other kind of business units and where it can be deployed. But take time, don't try and do everything all at once. Just take, it has to be a team effort though, everybody has to buy into it. And I think if you take the time, get a proper strategy in place and roll it out step by step, don't panic. It's not going away, you know, but you have to be thinking about it.
Yeah, and see that point around sort of getting people to buy in, like what's the best way to do that? Because as you said earlier, it's that fear, there's a fear people have of going, is this going to take my job? Am I not going to be needed anymore?
I wouldn't fear it, but I would embrace it and I wouldn't ignore it. I would look to, you know, the business titles, read up on it, know what's coming down the line, because it's huge impact, and not just on business. You look at the whole data center debacle, you look at, you know, sustainability, climate change, the impact in society, the cost on the national grid. Like, it's not just about business. The application of artificial intelligence is huge, and actually I think if we don't take control and regulate it more effectively, it'll be very messy. And you can already see, you can see the statistics out there already and the cost of it. So I would say, in my own kind of thought process, I would say at the moment you will see AI becoming much more expensive, right? So the likes of the AI applications that we use currently are quite cost effective to use, but I'd say it'll become more like your mobile phone data plan, that you'll have to pay for X amount of data, and that's what you'll get. And if you want more, you will pay more, because there's a lot of like silly little searches, like create cat memes. You know, people don't realize when they put that prompt into an app where that goes, the compute power behind that, the energy usage that comes back to create this silly little cat in an image. And we don't see that because we just want the end result. But actually there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we don't consider. And so not just for business or the day-to-day operations, but actually the much wider kind of economy impact that it will have. And we're only starting to see kind of results of that at the minute.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much, Naomh.
You're welcome.
I'm sure everyone has hopefully enjoyed that as much as I have, and learned a lot as well. I think definitely those 5 Ps are a great tip for anyone. So thanks again for watching here at the Beyond the Numbers.